Hello there, it's Dan over at Loxo with a quick look at our Tasks tab and the functionality found there in terms of creating tasks and managing your tasks or your donkey work in Loxo. It's actually very intuitive and easy to use, so let's dive into it. You guys remember from my 101 training that when you log into your Loxo account, up here at the top, you're going to see a series of tabs: jobs, people, tasks, companies, deals, outreach, Loxo source, and reporting. So we're going to hop into the task tab here and talk about the process of adding tasks and managing those tasks. Now, the first big concept when you arrive at the task tab is that you have a choice of how you view your tasks. So the default view, as you can see, is a list view, kind of an old school OG to-do list. So I've got 5 tasks that I've loaded in here for this training. Call Bob Smith, sync up with Matt, have a Zoom call with Sarah and Jess, send out those SurveyMonkey emails, and update the training video playlist, the bane of my existence. Now, you'll be able to also, though, up here at the upper left, pivot to 2 other views if you prefer. The next one is the calendar view. So in this view, you can see your tasks coming up on your calendar. Very intuitive way of seeing what's coming up each week in a weekly view here, and then manage your tasks accordingly. Now, the third view is a pipeline view, similar to the jobs pipeline that I talk about in the 101 training and the deals pipeline that I talk about in the 102 training. So in this case, my task pipeline, or board as we call it, has 3 stages: not started, crushing it, and done. So you choose which of those views, and I'll show you the advantages of each of those views here as we go. So let's start with the list view here. So I've got 5 tasks that I've listed over here on the left-hand side. Now, fundamentally, when I complete a task in the list view, all I need to do is put a check mark in this little box here, and it's going to strike through this task to let me know that I have completed that task and it is now done. So I'll do that. And that's basically the way you will manage your tasks, is by putting a check mark there where it says mark as done, to strike through that task and let you know that you've completed. That's about as bare bones and minimalist as you can get. But let's talk about some of these fields or columns that you have here in terms of kind of sorting and keeping track of the various types of tasks. So first of all, you'll be able to see to the right of the task who, if you've linked anyone to the task, like in this case, call Bob Smith. So I linked Bob Smith to this task. So, when I open up that task, I can click right through to his profile page and pick up the phone. But check this out, right next to it, if I want to, I can use the arrow down next to where it says email and fire off a quick email to Bob from here. If I change my mind about calling him, maybe I want to email him. But here as well, I can use the arrow down next to the phone icon, and I can actually call him directly from this task tab. By clicking right here, it'll dial that number through the Loxo user interface. So make sure you have your headset on if you click that button. Now, to the right of that, you've got project. If you want, for each task as you create it, you can indicate if there's a project that this is associated with, and also who the client, if there's a client, if this is with regard to a client. And then to the right of that, you've also got the ability, when you add a task, which I'll show you in a few seconds here, to indicate what type of task is it, i.e. is it a reminder to yourself to call someone, like call Bob Smith, or is it a reminder to yourself that you got a meeting coming up, like I got to sync with Matt, or I got a meeting coming up with Sarah and Jessica, or that I'm going to be sending an email out to a group of people. So again, you can indicate what type of task it is, and then you'll be able to use this little arrow down, up, down button to sort and filter appropriately. And to the right of that, same story. When you're adding the task, you'll be able to see the date that you created that task, and you can sort or filter by the created date as well. To the right, you can also indicate the due date if it's appropriate. Sometimes there won't be a due date, right? Like update the training videos. There is no due date. I'm always doing that, or I'm always sending out the SurveyMonkey requests, right? But some will have a due date, a particular date and time that you're going to be doing something. Some will not. So over here where it says due date, I've got 3 tasks of the 5 where there is a definitive due date, and 2 where it's just kind of a wide open, always, going to be a task I have to do. Now you use this little ball down here at the bottom to scroll to the right if you want to be able to sort by task stage, what stage in the pipeline, or the current status. right? So pretty intuitive here, right? Now the other big button, not the other big button, but another button I want to point to is to the left of each of these tasks. This little add button here is if you want to duplicate a task. So sometimes you have the exact same kind of task, but it's just like the person's name's different. Like I'm going to sync with Matt, then I'm going to sync with Sarah, and then Jessica and Bob and Steve, and this kind of thing. So I can use the duplicate task button. It'll basically create the task, and then you can go in there and edit it and sort of tailor it, right? Some of our folks, they absolutely love that little feature. All right, now let's segue next. And the other thing I want to just show you is down here at the bottom, you have a choice of, if you have a ton of tasks, you can show as many tasks on the screen as you want. So 25 per page, 50 per page, 100 per page. So you decide how many are in view here. Okay, so that's the list view. Let's segue next to the calendar view. I mentioned this is where you're going to be able to see the exact same task, but in a calendar view, so you can see them coming up on your calendar. And the idea is you click on the task and it opens up the box where you can get the details of the task and act on that task at that point. So pretty intuitive, right? And one other thing I'll say about the calendar view is if you have synced up your work calendar that you use at your place with your Loxo account, then as you create tasks here every day using this add button up here at the upper right, we're going to push those tasks out of Loxo and onto your calendar, whether you're using Outlook or Google Calendar or what have you, right? So that's an extra cool little feature that's built into this calendar view here. All right, now the last view is the pipeline view. Up here at the upper left, you click on the pipeline icon. And here we're calling it a task board, but it's just like a pipeline in the jobs tab or a deals pipeline. So you can build as many pipelines for your account as you wish. If you're the admin for your account, you can create a task pipeline for every single person on your team who's going to be logging into your Loxo account. Now let's talk about that process. To add additional task pipelines into your account, you're going to use this gray button up here at the upper right where it says Dan Hintz default. This tells me that this is my default task pipeline. When I log in every day into this demo account and I go to the task tab, it's always going to show me my task pipeline, even though we got a bunch that we built in here, right? And this is how you can sort of toggle or pivot between one pipeline and another. Here I'm looking at my pipeline, all the tasks that I've created for myself to do, right? Now I can also go though to Adam's pipeline or Maggie's pipeline or Daniel's pipeline, right? So if I go to Maggie's task board, now I'm looking at her task board. And if I hit the add button, I can create a task and drop it into her task board from here. So you're going to be able to toggle between the various task boards, create tasks, drop them into your coworkers' task boards, and always access yours. And in fact, yours will be the default one that you see whenever you log in to your account. Now to create the pipeline itself, or the job task board, as we call it, you're going to use the same gray button and down here at the bottom, click on add board to create a new one. Now you got to be an admin to do this. Now it's a couple of basic steps. First, at the upper left, you're going to give a name to this task board. So let's say I'm building one for Jessica. I would call it Jessica's task board or Jessica's task pipeline if I want. Now you're going to use this user down button and basically, or I'm sorry, click on the add user button and it gives you the two user down buttons here. Now the first one, you're going to see your name because it recognizes that you're logged in and that you're an admin, so you're able to create a task board for someone else. Now to tell Loxo who this task board is for, you're going to use this second user drop down here and choose the person. So let's say I'm building one for Jessica here. So I choose her from my list of employees that are logging into our account. And then you're going to put check marks here to the right of their name so that they are the admin of their own task board, right? They're the boss of their own task board going forward. Now, to create the task board itself for Jessica, you're going to use the add stage button here to add as many stages to this task pipeline or board as she wants. And you can call these stages whatever her lingo is, right? So you can edit these stages to match her terminology. And really it's up to her, right? You're building her dream task pipeline to keep her motivated. So if she's got some crazy coding or numbers or lingo or something or other slang that she wants to use, build it for her, right? So add as many stages, call those stages whatever you wish or she wishes. Now, the last thing I want you to remember is down here at the lower left, put a check mark here where it says make default task board. This tells Loxo that every time Jessica logs into this account, that this should be the task board that she sees. So make sure you put a check mark there. Then hit the save button here, and that will save that task board into this list here of all the task boards that you've got in your account, and then you can toggle back and forth between these task boards. Now, to create the task itself, you're going to use the blue add button at the upper right here. Click on that. It's going to give you a handy template. Pretty basic. First, give a name to the task, like call Tom Jones, right? And then write yourself a little note. Hey, Dan, don't forget to call Tom when he gets back from his big surfing trip in a couple weeks, whatever, just to jog your memory about what this task is all about, right? Now, at the upper left, if there is a due date and time for this task, then click here on this date and time button and pick out the date and time. I think I said I'm going to call him in a couple weeks on Friday the 25th, and let's say I'm going to call him at 3 p.m. So use the drop downs here to indicate the time, 3 a.m. p.m. So now I've set the time for June the 25th at 3 p.m. I'm going to hit apply, and that's going to apply that date and time, the due date, to this task. Now, if you have a task that you're creating, like the one I talked about, like update the training video playlist, where there is no due date, you just always have to do that, then click the little red X here, and there is no due date for this task then. So it's up to you. You don't have to have a due date. You used to have to have one, but you don't anymore. You can add a due date and time if you want, but if not, don't sweat it. Now, to the right of that, you can indicate what is the duration, the expected duration for this task. This phone call with Tom Jones, how long am I going to be on the horn with him? 15 minutes, a half hour, 2 hours? Maybe this is some big webinar I'm doing with his team or something, right? So in this case, maybe it's just a 15-minute quick check-in with him, right? So 15-minute duration on this task. Next to the right, you can indicate what type of task is this, i.e., is it a reminder to yourself to send an email to someone? Is it a reminder to yourself that you have a meeting scheduled with someone? That's the case. Or in this case, is it that I'm going to make a phone call to someone? So choose the type of task if that's relevant. If not, just uncheck this here, right? So, and then below that, I've already indicated, put in a little note to yourself to jog your memory about what this task is. And then at the lower left, one thing you definitely want to get in the habit of doing is when you create a task, link it, if appropriate, to the person in question, the company in question, the job in question, or the deal in question. Now, I would say 99 out of 100 times what we see is that when people create tasks, they usually link it to a person, right? Because typically it's like a follow-up phone call with someone, right? But if it makes sense, you can link it to a company, maybe a prospect you're wooing, or a job that you're working, or some kind of a deal. So I'll choose person. Now, it's going to prompt you to add the person's name. Now, this has got to be someone in your database for it to auto match. But let's see if we have a Tom Jones in our database. I'll be surprised if we do. But you can see how it auto populates. I typed in Tom. It's going to start showing me all the Toms in my database here in this demo account. So I type in Jones. We have a Heidi Jones. Maybe she goes by Tom. All right. So I'll choose Heidi Jones here. Her informal name is Tom. That's her nickname. So I've linked it to Heidi, right? So when I'm managing this task in my job board, I can immediately click through to her profile page and pick up the virtual phone and make a phone call to her, right? So it makes sense to take the few seconds it's going to take you to link that task that you're creating to the appropriate person or what have you. Then hit the save button down here at the lower right, and that will save that task you've just created into the appropriate task board or task pipeline at the appropriate stage, and you are on your way to organizational bliss. Now, as I showed you, basically you drag and drop your task from one stage to another. So in my example, if I sync with Matt, I drag that from not started to crushing it as I'm chatting with him, right? And when I'm done, I hang up the phone with him, I drag it into the done column. So this is an incredibly super intuitive way to sort of keep your eye on all your tasks so you don't forget stuff you need to do, and also to manage those tasks very easily by simply dragging and dropping them from one stage to another. And again, you can have your stages in whatever corny lingo like crushing it that you want, right? If you're a ninja, right? All right, so now one other thing about tasks before we wrap up here, and that's that you can create tasks as well very easily in a couple other different places. I want to remind you that when you're using the Loxo Chrome extension to pull people into your database in Loxo, you can create tasks right on the Chrome extension. So if you are pulling someone in from LinkedIn, let's say, and you've just done a bunch of stuff on the Chrome extension, there is an add task button there that you can click on to, set up like a follow-up call 2 weeks from now with that candidate or that prospect contact, let's say, right? So create tasks when you're using the Chrome extension, but really more importantly, when you're on someone's profile page. So if we hop over to the People tab for just a moment, it's going to load up some people at random here, Brandy and Travis and Lolita. So let's take Lolita Chandra here. If I click on her name, that's going to open up her profile page. We call it the flyover page. And this is the brand new flyover page that we're just rolling out this week. Now on the brand new flyover page, you'll be able to immediately schedule a task right here where it says schedule. So use schedule, click on task, and it opens up the exact same box. So the process of creating a task will be the same whether you do it on the task tab proper when you're managing your tasks every day, or whether you do it through the schedule button on the person's profile page when you're poking around on their profile page. And that is my quick overview of all things tasks in Loxo. As you can see, it's super intuitive, easy to use, and it's really going to help you stay organized and on top of all of your donkey work in Loxo. Now that said, if you have any questions as you're creating task boards or as you're creating tasks or managing tasks, don't be shy reaching out to us down here at the lower right using the chat button. You can always chat with support and get some best practice advice or ask any questions you might have about tasks. All right, thanks a lot for taking the time out to watch this quick training video.